to chapter 11, titled The Veil Born. The woman collapses in a lifeless heap, her body crumpling to the stone with a sickening finality. Before the shock can fully register, a sudden thwip cuts through the tense silence. A dagger slices past Royce's ear, close enough to graze the wind. Let me make sure this isn't loud, too loud, okay. It strikes the killer square in the chest with a brutal, wet thud. The man doesn't flinch. He simply stands there, unmoving, as blood blooms across his tunic like ink spilling through parchment. The color drains from his face as his eyes slowly roll back. And then, without a word, he folds inward and crashes to the ground in a heap beside the woman he just murdered. The crowd is frozen, stunned in stillness. The horror of what just happened hangs over them like a thick fog. Royce turns. Octavia stands with her arm outstretched, her fingers trembling slightly from the throw. Her expression is stern, but her eyes burn with fire. A man rushes to the fallen woman, dropping to his knees, tearing fabric from his tunic in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. Royce watches him for a moment, then gently steps forward, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. "She's gone," Royce says softly. The man looks up, eyes glassy. No words pass between them, only a shared, silent understanding. Meanwhile, Octavia strides toward the body of the attacker. Yes, Striker, shut up. Kidding. Good to see you, my sister. She kneels cautiously, searching for a pulse. Then her eyes widen. "Royce, he's alive," she exclaims, already tearing cloth from her pouch to apply pressure to the wound. Royce hurries to her side, his eyes locking under the shallow rise and fall of the man's chest. Faint, but real. "You there, go! Get the guards now!" He barks, pointing to a pair of stunned onlookers. They break their trance and bolt toward the heart of the city. Moments later, armored boots thunder through the cobblestone as 3 guards push their way through the gathering crowd. One of them surveys the scene. Blood, 3 collapsed bodies, and a city square on the edge of panic. "What in the hell's name happened here?" he mutters. Octavia doesn't look up. Her hands are slick with blood, pressing hard into the wound. "We don't know who he is yet," she says, her voice tight with urgency. "But he's the reason this happened. He has answers, and we need him alive." Roy stands beside her, jaw tight, scanning the crowd and the rooftops beyond. Something darker is stirring beneath the surface of Colesvik, and it's only just begun to show its face. The guards move swiftly, weaving through the gathered townsfolk with alarmed expressions, weapons drawn. One drops to a knee beside Octavia, offering a strip of cloth to assist with the wounded man, while others bark orders. "Clear the square! Get these people back!" the captain commands. "We need a stretcher and the city healer. Now!" As the crowd begins to disperse, Royce remains on high alert, hand resting on the grip of his axe. His eyes scan every face, searching for any sign of another threat, but all he sees are expressions of shock, confusion, and growing fear. Beside him, Octavia places a hand to the man's chest, her other applying pressure to the wound. Blood still seeps from around the embedded dagger, but it's slowing. Then, without warning, the man's eyes flutter open. His pupils are dilated, unfocused, but there's a strange intensity in them. His gaze locks on Octavia's. With a great effort, he chokes out a single sentence, his voice brittle and frayed. "The non-believers will perish." Octavia freezes. "What?" She breathes, leaning closer. "What does that mean?" The man's jaw clenches, his mouth trembles, as if he's trying to form another word. But his body suddenly jerks. A low, guttural sound escapes his throat, and his limbs convulse violently. His eyes roll back as a thick, Black froth sleeps from the corners of his mouth. Royce grabs Octavia by the shoulders and pulls her back. He's been poisoned, he says grimly. Octavia kneels there, stunned, watching as the man lets out one final, rattling breath, then goes completely still. By the time the city healer arrives with a stretcher and 2 guards, the man's skin has begun to pale, almost ashen. His blood stains the cobblestone in dark, oily streaks. The healer eyes the corpse with weariness. We'll take him into the city cellars, the captain says. Dead or not, someone will want answers. As his body is lifted, Octavia stands slowly, her eyes still fixed in the blood-slicked street. The man's final words coil around her thoughts like a creeping fog. Royce moves beside her. You ever heard of the Veilborn? Octavia shakes her head. No, but the way he said it. Her voice trails off. Royce finishes the thought for her. Sounded like a warning. The crowd slowly dissipates, still murmuring, while guards secure the square and cover the bodies. Royce watches it with a hard gaze before turning to Octavia, who stares at the blood-stained cobblestone as though trying to extract answers from them. She speaks first. Solvig might know something, but not yet. Her eyes flick toward the guards. Leaf is more likely to give us a straight answer. Royce nods, wiping his hands on his tunic. Without another word, the two move through the winding streets of Kolsvik, their pace quickening as they pass curious onlookers. The city, already stirred by the scream, buzzes with tension. Whispers travel faster than footsteps. Murder, prophecy, Veilborn. A storm of questions brews in every corner they pass. When they arrive at the Great Hall, a young guard posted outside blinks at their approach. Is he in? Royce asks, not breaking stride. The guard nods, and the doors of Kolvik's Great Hall groan as he pushes them open. A blast of mead-scented air greets them, warm, thick, and buzzing with murmurs. The hall is alive with quiet conversations, and the flickering glow of the firelight dances across the wooden walls. Shields hang from the iron brackets. Banners bearing the wolf sigil of Kolsvik sway from the draft of the open door. At the far end of the hall, seated at a long elevated table beneath the great carved wolf's head, Leaf leans forward, speaking in hushed tones with 2 of his advisors. He looks up as Royce and Octavia stride in, eyes narrowing slightly at the urgency in their approach. Royce, Octavia, Leaf greets, motioning for them to step forward. What brings you here today? Royce stops just short of the raised platform. There's been a murder near the square. A woman killed in broad daylight. Murmurs ripple through the hall like a low wave. One of the guards posted near the entrance glances towards the door. Leaf rises slowly, the firelight casting shadows across the battle scars lining his face. A murder. Octavia nods, her expression sharp. We were alerted by screams. When we arrived at the scene, a man lay lifeless on the ground, with a symbol etched into his chest. Another man pulled out a knife and slit the throat of a woman standing by. Octavia steps forward, voice low but clear. But before he struck, he spoke a phrase, something strange. He said, "The Veilborn have returned." The murmurs die. Even the crackle of the central hearth seems to quiet for a beat. Leaf's eyes fix on Octavia, and the strength in his shoulders falters just a heartbeat. Where is his man? He asks, his voice hardening. We acted immediately and took him down, Royce replies. We tried to stabilize him, but he had already been poisoned. Leaf is silent for a moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, he dismisses the 2 advisors at his table. They rise quickly and leave, their eyes locked on the floor as they pass Royce and Octavia. Finally, Leaf speaks, quieter this time. I want his body brought to the Great Hall. Leaf, Octavia says gently, sensing the weight behind his composure. You know the name. He exhales slowly, moving to stand behind the great hearth. I know of it. My grandfather whispered it when he thought no one listened. Old stories, buried ones. Stories even the skalds were forbidden to tell. I thought them nonsense. Roy steps closer. Then tell us, what are the Veilborn? Leaf looks into the flames, and for the first time since they met, there's fear in his voice. Something that should never return. Come with me. Leaf leads Royce and Octavia through a narrow archway tucked in the back of the great hall. The noise and warmth of the main chamber fade behind them as they enter a dim side room, small and colder. Its walls lined with relics of war and whispers of history. Ancient weapons rest on the wall-mounted racks, their blades dulled by time, but still radiating a quiet menace. Faded banners hang limp in the still air, their sigils long forgotten by most. A heavy desk dominates the far end of the room, cluttered with yellow parchment, ink pots, and half unfurled maps, their corners held down by stone weights. Leaf moves with uncharacteristic caution, stepping toward a shadowed shelf tucked in the corner. I need a drink, stand by. He reaches up and carefully pulls down a small wooden chest, dark with age and carved with intricate runes, worn smooth by generations of handling. Around his neck hangs a weathered iron key, no larger than a coin, which he now lifts over his head and slides free of its chain. He hesitates only for a moment before inserting the key into the chest. The lock clicks softly, and he opens the lid. A faint scent of old oil and dust escapes. From within, Leaf lifts a bundle wrapped tightly in oilcloth and faded wool, bound with a fraying leather cord. He lays it upon the desk. He looks up at Royce and Octavia, his voice low and serious. Read it, and speak of it to no one. What lies within must stay between us. Without another word, Leaf steps back, turning his gaze to the far wall, granting him the privacy of the moment. Royce casts a glance at Octavia, then reaches out and slowly begins to untie the brittle cord, unwrapping the layers with delicate hands. The cloth crinkles and peels away, revealing a scroll long yellowed by time. Its edges are frayed, the texture dry and fragile. Across the seal, long since broken, is an unfamiliar symbol. A jagged ring with 3 downward points, like a crown inverted or teeth gnashing from above. Octavia carefully unrolls the scroll across the desk. The ink is faded but intact, the script a mix of ancient runes and more recent translations scratched into the margins by a different hand. The parchment creaks as it flattens beneath our fingers. Of the Veilborn, as chronicled by Skald Hoth the Exile in the year of the last eclipse. There are those who walk not only the paths of men, but between the shadows of worlds. They are the Veilborn, children of the breach, heirs to the forgotten gods. Where others see sky, they see veil. Where others dream, they remember. Where others bleed, they believe. They began as seekers of truth, priests, mystics, voices of the forgotten ways. But truth gave way to hunger. They sacrificed kin to glimpse beyond the veil, and they found it staring back. They believed the gods never left, that they sleep beneath the world, waiting to be awakened with blood and fire. The Veilborn would tear the fabric of Midgard to bring them forth, to return the age of giants and monsters, an age without order. And so the clans united to destroy them. The world The wars burned half the land. Their temples were drowned in salt. Their name was banished from song and stone. But beware, for the veil does not forget. And even now, in the quiet corners of the world, the blood of the veil-born stirs, waiting for the day the veil grows thin again. Royce runs his hands slowly across the brittle scroll, his eyes flickering over the aged script and the jagged symbol above. The silence in the room hangs heavy, broken only by the muffled sounds of the great hall far behind the wooden walls. Octavia speaks first, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't a warning. It's a promise. Royce nods slowly, eyes still on the page. They knew they would return. Even after the defeat, they planned it. From the other side of the room, Lee finally turns back to them. His face is drawn. The light in his eye is dimmed by a deeper weight. When I was a boy, I asked my grandfather why we weren't allowed to speak of the old wars. The Veil Wars. He told me stories were like fire, beautiful, dangerous, and quick to spread. He said if you tell them too often, they stop being stories and start becoming invitations. Octavia raises an eyebrow. You think someone's trying to bring them back? Leaf shakes his head. Not trying. Somebody already has. Leaf paces the narrow room in silence, the floorboards creaking softly beneath his boots. Royce and Octavia remain by the desk, their eyes scanning the brittle scroll once more. The words linger in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Leaf finally speaks, his voice low and grim. There are very few alive who even know the name Veilborn. Their writings, what little survived, were meant to be preserved only by the kings of each realm. A quiet warning, a reminder of what once was, and what must not ever return. Octavia turns to him, her brow furrowed. Then what do we do now? Leaf pauses. His eyes drift toward the floor as he collects his thoughts. When he looks up, there's a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze, something rare from a man like him. For now, we do nothing. War is already looming at our doorsteps. With King Axel's suspected backing of the raids on our outlying villages, my focus must remain there. Before he can continue, Roy steps forward, his tone edged with urgency. But this, he gestures to the scroll. This is what once united the clans. If the Veilborn are truly returning, wouldn't this be reason enough to put aside the war with Axel? Leaf shakes his head, grim. No, not yet. One madman with a blade and a few cryptic words isn't proof. We need far more than that before any of the High Kings would believe the Veilborn walk the world again. He returns to the desk, carefully folding the ancient parchment with reverent hands. He wraps it in its layers and sets it gently aside the chest before turning the key. Gently inside the chest before turning the key and replacing it on the shelf. The people need unity right now, not fear. The threat from Axel is real and immediate. As for the Veilborn, we wait, we watch, and we speak of this to no one. His gaze lingers on the two of them. I'm grateful you brought this to me, truly. But there are many things demanding my attention, and now, even more. He exhales through his nose, the weight clear in his voice. Join us tonight. There will be a feast in your honor for the victory at the enemy camp. We'll speak more after that. Royce and Octavia exchange glances, then nod in quiet agreement. Without another word, they step out of the side room and make their way through the great hall's towering doors. Outside, the air is brisk, the sounds of the village faint beneath the wind. Royce notices the tension still clinging to Octavia, the tightness in her shoulders, the sharpness in her breath. Finally, she stops and turns to him. Well? Royce raises an eyebrow. Well, what? She folds her arms, frustration etched across her face. We're supposed to just keep quiet about this. Pretend like the return of some ancient cult isn't more important than a border war. Royce considers this, his voice calmer than hers. We don't know what we're dealing with. We've only been in Kolsvik for a short time. We don't know the full history, the alliances, the politics. We can't just run headfirst into something we barely understand. Octavia starts pacing, boots scuffing against the stone. Then we learn. She stops suddenly and looks him dead in the eye. We go to Solvik. She may know something, more than Leaf is willing to share. Ray straightens. Octavia, Leaf just told us to keep this between us. And the first thing you want to do is to bring this to the seer. She steps closer, eyes narrowing, but not in anger, in conviction. If you don't think this is a big deal, fine. But I do. If there's even a chance we can uncover the truth, maybe we can stop this war before it even starts. Think of how many lives we could save. Royce watches her for a long moment. The fire in her voice is similar. It's the same fire that drove them into the heart of danger time and time again. And with that being said, my brothers and sisters, we have our first decision to make on the night. Woo! Yay, decisions! Yay, voting! Yay, voting! Woo, voting! We'll do 2 minutes. Get your votes in! What are we doing? Yeah, but this isn't your life, Trash. This is somebody else's life. Get your votes in. We got a tie vote right now. We have tie vote. Where the fuck is this? Survey. Done it. It's still anyone's ball game. Still anyone's ball game. We got a 3 to 4 vote. It's not going to help me. 3 to 4 vote, guys. Get your votes in. Get votes in. Time is running out. Voting is important. Four to 4. Uh-oh. Are we gonna have a tie on the first one? Oh my God, the last second vote. The last second vote. The last second vote. And we have decided to go to Solvik. Royce exhales and nods just once. All right. We speak to Solvik. A faint smile pulls at the corner of Octavia's lips as she turns and begins winding her way through the narrow paths of Kolsvik. Royce trails behind her, his breath curling in the cold air. He realizes he has no idea where they're going, but he says nothing, trusting her lead. Minutes pass in silence. They leave the heart of the village behind, where tidy structures give way to worn fences and broken stones. Eventually, they stop in front of a crooked little shack, slouched between two jagged boulders. The walls are patched with mismatched planks, and a ragged curtain of threadbare cloth hangs limp in the doorway. Royce slows, eyeing the place with suspicion. Octavia, how do you know where the seer lives? She pauses, glancing back at him. Helga pointed it out when she gave me the tour. He raises an eyebrow. You sure about this? Octavia nods. I am. That's all Royce needed. He follows her as she pushes past the curtains, stepping into the dim hut. The heavy scent of smoke, earth, and dried herbs clinging to the air like a second skin. Inside the space is a small. Inside the space is small and cloaked in shadows, lit only by the flickering of a fire in the center of the room. Sitting cross-legged before the flame is Solveig, her back turned, draped in worn layers of wool and fur. Royce scans the room. Bundles of herbs hanging from the rafters, bones arranged on shelves, runes carved into the wooden walls. It feels less like a home and more like a shrine. Before he can speak, Solveig's voice cuts through the silence like a wind through dead trees. The blood on the wind has changed, she murmurs. I didn't expect you back so soon. Royce's glance is at Octavia, but she avoids his eyes. Octavia steps forward, her voice steady. We've come to ask you about something. Solveig raises a hand, silencing her. You carry the scent of something ancient, the weight of secrets, she says, still facing the fire. Royce watches as Octavia lowers herself to the ground across from the old woman. Yes, she says softly. We came to ask you about the Veilborn. The name lingers in the air like ash. Solveig slowly turns her head. In the shifting firelight, her face looks carved from stone, weathered, unreadable. Her eyes settle on Royce, cold and bright. She lifts a crooked finger and points. Sit, and I will share what I know, and nothing more. Royce lowers himself beside Octavia, the heat of the fire barely touching the chill in his chest. The flames crackle, casting flickering shadows across the walls like specters. Without another word, Solveig reaches into a satchel at her side and pulls out a bundle of herbs. She mutters something beneath her breath, language Royce doesn't recognize, and tosses the herbs into the fire. The flame leaps high, flaring bright green. A strange, bitter scent fills the air, sweet and sickly, ancient and alive. The light paints Solveig's face in an eerie glow, her eyes reflecting the fire like mirrors. She leans forward, voice sharp and soft. You wish to speak of the Veilborn? Then listen well. I'm not going to do this in the accent, guys. This is too long to read. Yeah, okay, fuck it, I'll do it in the accent. Let me take a drink first, though. Centuries ago, long before Kolsvik rose from the stone and timber, before the high clans ruled over sea and snow, there were whispers of a nameless cult. They had no banners, no homeland, and no true leader. Only a belief. A belief that death was not the end, but the beginning. They called themselves the Veilborn. At first, they were no more than a wandering sect. Men and women cast out by their villages for embracing the darkest corners of the old Norse ways. They spoke of hell, not as a punishment, but liberation. They claimed that Odin's teachings were false, But the gods had lied, and that the true power lay in what exists beyond the veil. The thin barrier between the living and the dead. Where others honored the gods through ritual and reverence, the Veilborn performed sacrifices. Where others feared the Draugr, they sought to become them. They studied the void between Yggdrasil's branches, the forgotten places of Ilnugagap, and recalled to ancient things not found in the sagas. As generations passed, their whispers spread like a rot in the roots of society. Disillusioned warriors, failed jarls, seeking seers and exiles. They were all drawn to the Veilborn's promise, freedom from fate, and the domination over death itself. It wasn't until the Veil Wars that the clans realized the extent of the threat. In secret, the Veilborn had built strongholds, entire underground halls where the dead walked beside the living. They had raised armies of zealots and reanimated warriors, corrupted by seer priests and cursed beasts twisted by dark rituals. It was said they could speak to those long dead and draw secrets from their bones. The northern clans, once fractured by blood feuds and border disputes, united for the first time in history, not out of honor, but fear. The Veil Wars were brutal, not merely battles of steel, but of spirit. Warriors were known to go mad on the battlefield, hearing voices from beyond, or turning on their own men without cause. Skalds of the time refused to sing of those days, believing the words would carry a curse. The final blow came at the Battle of Skarhirim, when the last high priest of the Veilborn tried to open what he called the True Gate, a rift between realms. The clans razed the stronghold to the ground, burying the cult leaders in the tomb, sealed with sacred runes and fire. After their defeat, the victors turned their blades inward, not at each other, but at any remnants of the Veilborn. Books were burned, graves were crushed, temples torn down, stone by stone. Those who were clung to the old teachings were hunted and hanged. The Veilborn were not merely defeated, they were erased. Time did the rest. The memory of the Veil Wars faded into shadows. Generations passed, and what was once an honor became a horror, became legend, the superstition, then nothing. Only a few old scrolls remain, buried deep in forgotten libraries or hidden in the hands of those in power. Now, those ancient fears stir once more. As Solvik's story ends, the flickering green fire settles into a quiet smolder. The hut feels heavier now, thick with silence and the weight of ancient truth. Octavia and Royce sit motionless, their thoughts tangled, eyes locked on the embers. Neither speaks. There's nothing left to say. At least not yet. Solvik stares blankly into the flames, her face carved in stillness. Octavia finally breaks the silence, her voice low. Do you know who's behind the return? Solvik's eyes snap up from the fire, sharp and sudden. I've spoke all I know, she says, voice steady but distant. If you seek more, your path lies in Yortmere Forest to the north. Follow the boulders to the forest heart. What do you find there? May I answer questions? I cannot. Octavia rises to her feet, and Royce stands with her. Thank you, Solvik, she says softly. The old seer extends her hand. Without hesitation, both Royce and Octavia press their tongues to the weathered palm, a sign of respect from the old ways. As they turn to leave, just as the curtain parts behind them, Solvik's voice cuts through the room one last time. Be cautious. Those woods lie in King Axe's lands. Neither speaks as they retrace their steps through the quiet paths of Kolsvik. They passed the spot the incident took place hours earlier, now cleared of all signs but a dark stain on the frozen ground. Life in the village moves on. Death, it seems, is common enough to fade quickly here. At last, they reach their small home. Royce moves wordlessly to his bed, pulling off his boots with slow, tired motions. Octavia kneels by her pack and starts rummaging with urgency. "What are you doing?" Royce asks, raising an eyebrow. She pulls out a sheet of parchment and spreads it across the table, already reaching for ink and quill. "Writing it all down. I don't want to forget anything we were told." Royce lets out a short breath and smirks. "You always remember—" Quiet! Octavia's voice is sharper than she means. She slams the table to emphasize it, then winces. Her face shifts from irritation to guilt as she glances over at him. "Sorry, I just need to concentrate." Royce leans back on his bed, still unsettled but letting it go. "Fair enough. I'm gonna get some rest." She doesn't reply, already bent over her work, scratching lines on notes into the parchment in precise practice hand. As Riff drifts off, the sound of her pen becomes a lullaby in the background. Some hours later, a sharp breeze stirs him awake. The front door creaks shut just as he blinks his eyes open. He sits up in alarm, only to see Octavia re-entering, her arms full of books and scrolls. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you," she says, setting the stack on the table with care. "It's fine," he mumbles, still half asleep. His legs swing off the bed and pads across the room. The table is a battlefield of parchment, maps, and dusty tomes. His eyes sweep across them in confusion. What is all this? Octavia flips open a book and pulls out a folded map from between the pages. She spreads it out and taps a marked region with her finger. "Here. Yortmere Forest. Just north of Hall." She looks up, her gaze sharp, waiting for his reaction. Royce exhales through his nose and shakes his head, walking away to dress. Can't be serious. Octavia crosses the room and places a hand gently against his chest, stopping him mid-motion, her green eyes catching his, unwavering. "And what if I am?" Her fingers trail softly down his chest, the moment laced with challenge and intimacy. Royce catches her hand with his, holding it between them. "Then I'd say you've gone mad," he replies, a grin tugging at his lips despite himself. He releases her hand and steps away, tugging on his shirt and reaching for his boots. "Leaf will be expecting us soon. We should be getting ready for the feast." Octavia frowns, her mood shifting like the wind, but she turns away without another word and begins dressing herself. The moment hangs unfinished between them, unanswered, unspoken. The two finish getting ready in silence. They make their way through the celebratory streets of Coleswick as the townfolk enjoy the festivities. The great hall pulses with warmth and sound. Flames dance along the stone hearth, casting golden light across the carved beams. Laughter and the clatter of wooden mugs echo across the space as warriors and villagers gather for the feast. Tables groan under the weight of roasted meats, loaves of dark bread, and jugs of honeyed mead. Royce and Octavia enter side by side, cloaked in furs, in silence. The tension between them remains unspoken but felt. She keeps her gaze scanning the room, while Royce's hand rests loosely on the hilt of his blade, not in threat, but in habit. What's going on, Boosa? How you doing, brother? And Hazel, how you guys doing? Leaf spots them from the high table and raises a horn in greeting. They have arrived. A cheer erupts around the hall. Some warriors slam their fists to the table. Others raise their mugs. Royce gives a small nod. Octavia offers a polite smile, though her mind is elsewhere. They approach the head of the room, where Leaf gestures for them to sit beside him. You've earned a place at the high table tonight, he says, pouring mead into two polished horns. There's much to discuss. After the drink and food, of course. Royce takes the horn with a small nod. We're honored. At the center of a hall, a massive boar stuffed with herbs, apples, and garlic turns slowly on a spit, its crackling skin glistening with juices. Around it, young children dart between legs, chasing each other with sticks shaped like swords, playing out their own versions of the battle. The returning warband is the focus of it all. Royce and Octavia sit near Leith at the long high table on the raised platform. The names are spoken with pride tonight. Whispers of the fire distraction, the ambush, the raiders who never saw it coming. The people of Colesvik revel not just in the meal, but in the idea of hope, vengeance, and strength. The Skald steps forward at one point, his beard braised with gold wire, his eyes bright with mead. He recites, "By ash and blood they held the line. By storm and steel they took the fight. The fire rose, the dark did fall, and Colesvik's name was heard for all." Leif rises next, slamming his mug onto the table, sending foamy ale sloshing. "You fought not for glory," he bellows, "but for our people, for our fields, our king, our dead. Tonight, we drink to what was won, and to what is coming. Soon, the wolf will rise." The hall chants back, "Let the wolf rise! Let the wolf rise!" Drums thunder now, faster, harder. Warriors begin a traditional round dance around the fire, boots pounding in rhythm, arms locked at the elbows. The circle of movements like a wheel turning through centuries of custom. Some women jump in, their hair wild, laughter free. Others sing, high and sharp, voices rising like wind over fjords. Royce, though caught in the rhythm of it all, can't shake the weight in his chest. Every clink of a horn reminds him of Solveig's words. Every cheer is shadowed by the image of the upside-down crown and the green fire's glow. Octavia sits still, fingers tightly tapping the table as if counting something. Her eyes scan faces, looking for signs of awareness, of hidden truths, and for those who already suspect what's brewing. A young woman offers a fresh plate of food, goose legs, roasted turnips, and black bread thick with honey. Royce forces a smile and thanks her. Immediately, Octavia stands from a chair and heads towards the door. Concerned, Royce follows her. She leads him to the city's quiet outskirts. Stand by. Breath fogging in the air. She pauses before turning to Royce. "We should leave tomorrow." Octavia says, "Before dawn, no one will notice with the feast aftermath." Royce sighs. "To Yortmere." She nods. "Solveig gave us a place. We follow the trail, find the heart of the forest, and get the answers no one else wants." Royce stares ahead. "You know what this means, right? If we find proof, we may not only be stopping a war, we might be starting something way worse." She takes a few moments before responding. "Or we stop a small problem before it becomes a big problem." Royce fights with the weight of the decision. His heart beats faster as Octavia awaits a response. And that, my friends, brings us to poll number 2. Let us vote. Let us vote. Should Royce agree with Octavia that they should leave in the morning? Should he disagree? Or should he tell Leaf about the plan that they're brewing? What's going on, Bordeaux? Get your votes in, my friends, ladies and gentlemen. We're just finishing up chapter 11 of The Tale of a King. We got 3-1-4 vote here. We have a 3-1-4 vote. What's going on, Bursa, Hazel, everyone that may have came in when I wasn't paying any attention and reading? I appreciate it, guys. Good to see you all. I hope you've had a wonderful Tuesday. Are we really only gonna get 8 votes? Voting matters, my friends. Get your votes in. But this might be a pretty big decision. This might be a pretty big decision in the story. It might be a pretty big one. It might be a pretty big one. There it is. It's been decided. Tell Leaf their plan. And with that being said, my brothers and my sisters, scene! Chapter 11 is in the books.